Hi, this is the second of a series of videos I'm making on the models that I'm using to track the political election here in the US for president in 2024. My name is Nick Gross. I'm a physicist and educator, but in my spare time, I'm also a political junkie and watch way too much news and spend way too much time looking at these models, which don't update more than a couple of times a day, but which I stare at and thought that a video series might be help put that uh, to good use. And so um, I've in the introductory series, I've already introduced what these models are. They're at ones from the ABC News 538 polling tracker, and then another one is Nate Silver's original model. And so you can go back to that video and hear more about that history. What I want to do today, or what I want to do in this video, is talk about the how these models are put together, what goes into making these models. If you haven't figured it out already, this is an unscripted video. It should be fairly short, but I'm not going to try and stick to a script on that. There's two different pieces of information that go into these models, or two sort of main components to these models. One, of course, is polling data, some of which you're seeing on the screen. Actually, that's not what you're seeing here. Let's find their it's on here, right? This is the 538 polling data, and then polling average, and then the other one is Nate Silver's polling average. And then the other piece that goes into the models are some fundamentals of whether, what's the state of the economy. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But also then the incumbency of the candidates, or some, if when the polling is not as good, proxies for polling, such as like near state comparisons. So let's talk about the polling averages first. Any one poll is a snapshot in time. It's also any one poll. There's polling between a few hundred and a few thousand people, and you're trying to get a sense of what millions of people are thinking. There's going to be some error involved, and so what you want to know, and of course, there's also polling biases depending on the not the individuals, but the institutions that are involved. So there's a variety of different institutions that that these two polls draw from. For example, here's the 538, the most recent polls that 538 is drawing from, and you can see that there's all these different institutions that are companies or consulting firms that are being drawn from, and they have different types of a weighting depending on how many, what the methodology is from these companies, whether it's likely voters or registered voters. And so all of that goes into a weighting average for 538. Similarly, for Nate Silver's model, he has different pollsters that are involved, what their outcomes are, but also the influence on the model, how much they weight that. And that depends, again, on the quality of the poll, whether they're clear on their methodology and they use a good methodology for sampling the population and getting and using that sample then to predict what the likely voter model is going to be. But also then they weight it by what were the past outcomes from this polling firm, right? If they were weighted, so they'll weight these depending on whether they tend to not editorially lean one way or the other, but maybe if you look at their past outcomes, find out that they might lean one way or the other, that they, in a world where there are only two parties, whether they lean more Democrat or more Republican. just because of there's something in their magic sauce, their algorithm, their approach to polling that tends to lean one more way or the other. So, and this is how you get polling averages. And the reason that you do that, of course, is you don't want to cherry pick. You get pundits out there who are cherry picking polls. And so it's right at the beginning of September, just before Labor Day right now. And right now, the Fox News polling, which is a fine polling firm, independent of Fox News, but the Fox News polling is everybody's talking about that, but that's one snapshot at one point in time by one polling firm, and you want to figure out what it's been looking like over the course of different polling. The other piece that goes in, but Nate Silver has a breakdown. Here we go. All right. The other piece that goes in is what are the fundamentals? So in particular, for example, the economy is a big thing. And these are all the pieces that in Nate Silver's model go into forecasting for the economy. And so whether it's consumer price index or non-farm payroll and a measure of the stock market, all of these things could be positive or negative for primarily for or against the incumbent, and so that goes into some of the weighting that will go on in the poll. So a piece of that goes into this. In 538, they give you the same sort of thing. They tell you about the polling averages, and right now their election forecast is 88% of it is based on the polling averages. Only 12% of it is based on the fundamentals. I'll tell you that my understanding from listening to Nate Silver is that he thinks that weighting is too skewed towards polling averages more than 60 days out from an election, and would like to see more weighting on the fundamentals. And so he's a little more bullish on the polling averages and wants to see the fundamentals weighted more. So it's a combination of these different things that are all going together that make up this model. So it's not a simple just who's up and who's down. The other piece to this you have to keep in mind, especially for people from outside the US, is that we aren't predicting the results of one election. We're predicting the results of 50 state elections, right? Plus also the outcomes in for Nebraska and Maine. Remember that Nebraska and Maine proportion their electoral college votes by district rather than by state. So most states proportion. We have this electoral college system. I'm not going to go into that right now. Most states are winner take all, so you get all. If you win California, you get all of California's 54 electoral college votes, no matter if you win by one vote or you win by a landslide. But for Maine and Nebraska, it's a little bit different. For Maine, it gets proportioned congressional districts, so they have a slightly different way. That's why you'll see different colors in Maine. One part of it might be red and part of it might be blue. But the point is that these models have to predict 50 different elections. And so the elections in all 50 states, and then put that all together to make a prediction about how many electoral college votes that they will get, independent of whether the candidate is winning the popular vote across the entire country, right? And so if you switch over to the electoral college vote probability, you see it's very close here in Nate Silver's model. It's a little bit less close in the 538 model, but notice that both of these have might be very hard to see. Both of these have light bands around them that mostly overlap, and those light bands are telling you the error bars or the chances of winning. And I'm going to go back to the win probabilities for both of these, and again point out that this is not a scoreboard. This is telling you what's going to happen if you roll the dice now, and you get one roll of the dice. You get one chance to do this election. It's still a very, very close election. And who's up and who's down is very hard to tell.